If you've been a caregiver for more than a few minutes or a couple of hours, you may already know the term burnout. If you've been a caregiver for, say, a year, you certainly do know the term burnout. There are two types of burnouts. There's physical burnout, and then there's mental burnout. Physical burnout is what we feel when we've worked really hard, we've done all of these different things, and we're just tired, really tired. Mental burnout affects us in a slightly different way. It's from the things that we think. Today, I'm going to talk more about the mental side than the physical side. And let's see if I can get this to work. Debbie, I'm having trouble with the screen again.
Okay, I can go ahead and. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Okay. Sorry. Technology and I have a great relationship. The two major sources of stress and burnout are situational stress and expectational stress. So what's the difference? Situational stress involves the environment, the timing of things, and those wonderful helpers that we sometimes call the other people. The environment is where you are, what's around you, who's around you. Are you in a traffic jam? What's going on that can really complicate what you're trying to do and make life very difficult for you? Many times we don't leave enough time in our schedules to handle things like traffic jams, delays at the doctor's office, something happening to the car. All of these things can really create a situation where we're just so stressed out that we've had it. Let us out of here. When we look at the timing of things, we have to look at things that are more boring, like developing schedules, and what is the actual time of the day, and what is it that's not going to get done if you don't get it done now. All of those things are very important, but when we allow them to take over, that's when our burnout factor goes way up. Scheduling is something that everybody needs to work with, and there are some great tools that I'll tell you about later in developing schedules, but the basic one is a calendar. You need a calendar. You need to pay attention to what time of day you're scheduling things. If you're scheduling a medical appointment consistently at 8 o'clock in the morning because that's what the clinic says they have open, you need to negotiate more with the clinic. That's probably too early to get your loved one up, ready, out the door, and to the doctors. So you really need to pay attention to that aspect of things. Another aspect with the actual time of day is if you're dealing with mental health issues with your loved ones, dementia or some other form of mental health issue, the time of day can really affect the attitude and the actions of your loved one. That will make your job as a caregiver much more difficult. Someone who's experiencing sundowner syndrome may have really difficult behaviors to deal with. So you don't want to plan things for later in the day when that time of day is becoming a problem. And you have to be realistic enough with yourself to realize that some things are not going to get done. That laundry just may have to sit there. But if you let that overwhelm you, well, I'm not getting it done, I can't keep up with it, on and on, that's what develops high levels of stress that lead to burnout. But then there's those wonderful people, those other people. Those are the people, our friends, co-workers, sometimes the relatives, often the relatives, those who come right when you're doing something and say, oh, this will just take a moment. Oh, well, my mother used to do whatever. Don't forget to call me if you need some help. All at the wrong time. Very difficult to deal with some of those. Family can be the most difficult to deal with. Family often shows up, doesn't do a whole lot, but has a lot of advice. I wish I could help, but I'm not going to be in town that week. Well, Dad always said he wanted, see all of those fill in the blank sentences? I'm sure you've had to deal with some of them. So we'll talk a little bit about how to deal with some of those issues regarding friends, coworkers, and families. If you have friends that are giving you too much advice. Sometimes it's a good idea to have a couple of things that you can give back to them and say, you know what would really help me is if you could deliver a meal on Thursdays every other week. Give them something specific to do. If they can't do that, they'll probably shut up and not bother you anymore. So the more specific you are on those requests, and you can do that with your family too, you can forestall some of the things, and you might be surprised. You might find some people actually give you additional help, and that can help with your stress and with your levels of burnout. Expectational stress is more difficult to deal with. This is stress that we don't even really understand is happening. It's where inside of us, we're expecting things to get better. We're expecting aging to stop or reverse. We're expecting ourselves to be able to handle everything without any problems. We're expecting others to understand what we're going through and to actually care. And then we're expecting more of ourselves than we are possibly able to give. Expecting something to happen almost always leads to disappointment, whether it's raising your kids and expecting them to become NASA space astronauts or doctors, and they choose to be an artist or something else that doesn't fit your picture, you will have a disappointment. Well, the disappointment that we face in caregiving, the basic one is the fact that our loved ones are going to die. We don't want to think about that. We get busy with other things trying to help them be as comfortable and as healthy as possible. And very often, that side of the caregiving becomes overwhelming because dad continues to decline. Mom gets worse. Somebody ends up needing more help, not less. So if we're expecting things to get better, we allow ourselves to emotionally develop stress that can lead us to really severe burnout in our caregiving duties. So what do you do about that? Well, that's a little difficult. One of the things, if you look back at your timing, it's very important to understand the difference between quantity and quality. How long someone lives is not necessarily the same as how well someone lives. I have a philosophy that it's better to have someone live as well as they can, as long as they can, but not as long as they can at the expense of their quality of life. Now, I'm lucky. My dad is 93. He's still takes care of most things himself, still climbs a ladder to pick grapefruit. But one day he's going to need more help. One day he may fall off the ladder and kill himself. I have to accept those things, and I could address it in one or two ways. I could say, Dad, I'm taking all the ladders away because this is too dangerous for you to do. Okay, what have I done? I have just taken away more of his freedom. I already took away the car. He cooperated with that, thank goodness. But we can begin to box in our loved ones by removing things from their lives. And we can overwhelm them with medical appointments, with extra nutrition, with making them eat healthy food. At 93, my dad can eat anything he wants to. I'm not going to tell him, you can't have that, you can't have whatever. It's up to him. If it speeds up his passing, I'll be very sad, but I won't be regretful because it was something he chose. Now, when you're working with someone that has dementia, it's a little bit different because they may not understand the choices that they're making. You may have to move in and make better choices for them. Someone who is having trouble swallowing should not be given the option of eating a piece of steak without it being minced. That just is not something that's a very smart thing to do. They will choke and they will choke to death. So you have to balance it when you're working with dementia. But for the most part, try to find out from your doctor what would happen if dad only had to come see you once a quarter instead of every other week or once a month? Chances are your physician is going to say, well, unless something bad happens, I guess that would be okay. If he shows some problems, then make an appointment and bring him in. I've not had a doctor say, oh, no, you have to bring him every other week. Absolutely. I've never had that. And I work with about 200 and something people. Dad doesn't particularly enjoy sitting in the doctor's office. You don't particularly enjoy sitting in the doctor's office. Maybe you're having too many appointments. Because if they're not addressing a specific problem and making it better, what's the real point? You have to think seriously about those things. Now, I'm not saying do not go to the doctor. Absolutely not. Do not take the advice of the physician. You need to listen to your physician. But factor into it the quality of life that those visits are providing your loved one. Okay, so that's just a suggestion on timing. In expecting things to change, facing the fact that we are providing care on a one-way street is real important. And that street has an end. As perhaps not nice as this sounds, it's a dead end. It has an end that is someone's passing. We have to get to the point where we can accept that. And then many of the things that we do are no longer focused on, oh no, dad's going to get sick if he eats that. It's going to raise his blood pressure. It's going to really cause him a big problem. To how can I make dad enjoy what he's eating? Instead of going to the doctors, maybe it's taking a trip to the beach. Maybe it's a ride around the island instead. Something that increases the quality of life, the enjoyment of life. And that will also increase your levels of capacity, lessen your levels of stress, and help to prevent burnout. Now, there are a lot of different things that we can do in dealing with burnout and stress. Some of them are very practical, just normal things that everybody can do. But there are also very important resources that you want to pay attention to. One of the most important is understanding the financial situation for your loved one and for yourself. As much as you might want to, you should not impoverish yourself to take care of your loved one. There are benefit programs that can work for almost every senior. They may take the planning and some help of an attorney, but use what is available, but understand what your needs are, what your own family's needs are, what your future needs, and then what are the resources that your parent perhaps or your loved one has to be able to apply toward their care. Then begin looking at what types of programs might be available. And you can spend a lot of time doing this, but what I recommend is getting someone in the field of caregiving, perhaps a case manager, a care coordinator, a social worker, someone who is familiar with the benefit programs that are available, to come in, sit down, look at the situation with you, and help identify programs that you might qualify for. For instance, if your parent is a veteran of a war, I forget up to when, but there's a period of years that most of our parents fall into. And if they were actively serving during a time of war, they're eligible for a program called Veterans Aid and Attendance. And that's a very generous caregiving program. It's not easy to qualify for, but if you do qualify for it, you'll love it. Lots of help is available. There are other programs. The state has a program, they call it MedQuest. Most people just refer to it as Medicaid, and there's nothing wrong with Medicaid. It's a good program for those who need it. Perhaps your parent has been very wise and was able to purchase long-term care insurance when it was still a reasonable product to purchase. Then you need to know, how do you qualify for that insurance to take place and to begin paying, and what will it pay for? So some of these things require somebody helping you figure all of that out. But it's very important because the kind of care that you're able to provide depends on financial resources. Now, if you're fortunate enough that your loved ones have enough financial resources where it's not that big a concern about the cost of that care, then you have lots of options and can hire in a lot of help that can relieve you of the physical and the mental or emotional stress and prevent burnout. Most of us aren't in that kind of position. Most of us don't have $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 a month of discretionary money that we can spend providing care for our loved ones. So it's really important to know what money you have and your future. So this means we got to plan for ourselves. Let's not do this whole thing to our kids. Plan for yourself, understand what your parents have, and then understand the programs that are available that can help. Now, if your parents are like mine and you start asking them about money, you may get the same response I did. What? Waiting for me to die. So you have to find a real good way of asking, how much money do you have? Do you have a mortgage on the house? Do you have any loans? What's your income? But you've got to know those things. So what I did was to sit down with my dad and say, look, here's the worst case scenario. If mom, and poor mom, I beat up on her because that makes dad feel bad, and then he tells me things. I said, Dad, if mom ends up in a nursing home because we can't provide the care at home, it could be $13,000, $14,000 a month. How much of that can you provide and for how long? He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, a few months. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, we could probably do, well, if we really had to, maybe 8, 9 months. I said, okay, well, now I have a thing to go on. He said, what are you trying to do? I said, what I'm trying to do is understand your resources so my sister and I can figure out what we have to do to help if that situation comes up. He opened right up, showed us all of his documents, showed us his trust, showed us his bank account, went through everything. We went through it with mom. Now they're very open about it and very realistic about it. So be careful how you ask, but don't hesitate to ask and get into that. Finances are essential. Ask professionals. There are great people in this industry. Social workers. Last month was the National Social Workers Month in our country, and we were honoring those people. These are folks who have made their lives and focused their lives on people needing care in some form of social work. They are terrific resources. Every hospital has a social worker, at least one. Most doctors' offices have a connection with a social worker. The Adult Mental Health Division of the state of Hawaii, Department of Health, has social workers. Most of the Navian has social workers. Most of the other hospice organizations have social workers. Many churches have social workers. So there are lots of people out there. And then there are people we call care coordinators. Here at the Caregiver Foundation, we provide a tremendous amount of care coordination. Care coordination is different from case management. Case management is a licensed person who is organizing the actual contractual care for someone. A care coordinator is putting all these pieces together, perhaps a case manager, perhaps a financial planner, perhaps a gardener, perhaps a transportation company. All those pieces are coordination fields that care coordinators work with. Case managers are also a great resource. If your loved one needs to go to a community care home, a case manager will probably need to be involved in that placement. They're great people to talk to. Sometimes it's good to call them up and say, can I ask you some questions? Mom's not quite ready to go into a care home, but here's the problem I'm having. They may say, you know what you need is some in-home care. Let me give you some ideas. There are some great home care agencies that can be expensive, but They can also really make a difference in the level of stress and burnout that comes your way. And then the legal and the financial side of things. This is really important. You need to know who owns what and how it's titled. If a home is owned by your parents and it's in a trust and you need to apply for Medicaid, you need an attorney or someone to help you take that home out of the trust. It's still an excludable asset, but it has to come out of that trust. So there are lots of legal issues that you have to look at and you have to deal with. One of the biggest mistakes families make is in putting other people, usually their kids, on the title of homes or on the title of their bank accounts. If they put you on their bank account as a joint account holder, you now legally own 50% of what's in that account. You also have full access to everything in that account. If you get sued for some reason, whoever's suing you might be able to get the court to take what's in that account and help pay for that lawsuit. You're going, but that's not my money. Well, legally it is if you're co-owner. If your name needs to be on that account, put it on the account as a signer only, authorized signer. You can talk to the bankers about that, but it's really important. Even more important is don't put your name on the title of the property. If you do, you lose half of what's called step up in basis. And that's the difference between what Dad bought the property for and what it's worth today. And if you don't want to have to pay a huge amount of tax, you need to be very careful that the property is still in their name or in the trust when they pass, so that it comes to you and the other heirs at a higher level. So you have to understand the legal and financial aspects of caregiving as well. As you learn these things, apply them to yourself. Organize yourself so that your kids have this information well before they even need it. I was mentioning calendars a while back. Calendars are a really important aspect of caregiving. You need to know when things are going to happen, what time they're going to happen. Is it something that's going to repeat itself on a regular basis? Who's involved with it? Is there help that you've planned in to deal with it? And do you have a plan B? What happens if you wake up and the car will not work? Do you have someone you can call to get to the doctor's office or get to the grocery store because things need to be purchased? I like the program that's called lotsahelpinghands.com. That's LOTSA, Lotsa, helpinghands.com. It's a great tool. The last time I used it, it was still free. It might have a small fee now, but it's an electronic calendar that you can use to organize what's going on in your life. And it's so useful because you can get other people involved with that calendar. You can let different people have access to it. My father went in the hospital a few years ago, very, very sick. And my sister and I were bombarded with phone calls. My dad's a retired minister. So everybody that knew him was calling up. How's Dad? How's Dad? How's Dad? On and on until we were just exhausted and didn't want to talk to anybody anymore. We found out about this Lots of Helping Hands site and we set up an account. Put Dad's picture on it. We put all of the updates on it and we put that link out to all of his friends. It also allowed his friends to volunteer to do different things. We would put a list of times Dad would need to go back to see the doctor or meals that needed to come in or different things. It was amazing. People could actually sign up the date and the time, and that program would send them a reminder and send us a reminder. It's not like putting it out on Facebook where everybody knows and everybody gets involved. This is a very organized system. So you might want to look at that as a tool that can help you. But have plan B. It's so important to have something in the wings that you can call on. Uber is a good program. What's the other one? Lyft, or there are a couple of others. Those are okay. Know how to use it. I was on a trip, on a business trip, and ended up in Kentucky at the wrong airport. I needed to go 120 miles to a different site. And this was at 1:30 in the morning. I called up our office and they said, oh, well, just turn on your phone. You've got the Uber app on there and just call a car. I had no clue how to do that. So they did it from Hawaii for me and got me the car, and we took a 120-mile trip. That was interesting. But learn to use those tools because they're good plan Bs. Now, as a caregiver, you have a few, what would you call them? Secret weapons. They're really important to use. I'm one slide ahead of myself. I beg your pardon. Let's go back a little bit. You're either your best resource or your worst enemy. That's a terrible thing to hear, isn't it? I'm sure you've heard about it in other instances, but either you're planning carefully, using calendars, using tools, having plan B, and being very organized, or you're letting it all overwhelm you, and I guarantee you will be burned out faster. So as boring as it is to schedule anyway. It's essential to your mental health and your physical health. Schedule things. Now, if you're the only child or the only child that will actually do something, you have a harder position. You're going to need to figure out other ways to involve perhaps friends, perhaps coworkers, perhaps you're going to have to face hiring some care in. Because if you try to do every aspect of care, it's impossible. It's very difficult, and it goes from where you are now to even more care needed. When my aunt could no longer live in the senior housing program, I got her moved into an assisted living facility, and she did pretty well there, but she continued to decline. So we had to think about a community care home. We went through several different ones that just didn't seem to fit with her. And her condition went further down, and she ended up at Pearl City Nursing Home and did very well there until she passed last year. It was really important for me that I was very practical. I wanted to take care of her. I wanted to take her home, but I was not physically able to give her the care that she needed. I could not pick her up. I don't have a great back. I wasn't prepared to bathe her. My wife would have. That wouldn't have been a problem. But she also had aspiration problems. She had different medical issues that compromised different parts of her life. She needed professional care. And as much as it hurt to move her somewhere into a permanent facility, it was the best choice for her. Now, she was under Medicaid, and Medicaid was a very good program for her. We certainly couldn't have afforded to finance that nursing home. Think ahead. Be very, very careful about the things that you're taking on and how you're organizing them. Now, onto those secret weapons. The word no is the best one. You've got to feel okay using the word no. No, I can't come over right now. No, I don't have chicken tonight. We have fish. No, I can't do the laundry right now. You'll have to wear the red shirt. No is an important part of caregiving. Not now. That's a little less harsh. I can't do it right now. Your sister calls up and I need this, and this. Can you help? I can't right now. Why? Because I'm taking care of mom or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to seem to be a bad guy. It's all right. You're not really being a bad guy. You're putting some limits to the amount of care and stress and burnout that you're willing to accept. And then there's the big one, never. Think about the things that are just too much. They're different for each one of us. Don't be afraid to say, I will never be able to do whatever it is. One of the things that I have really not wanted to look toward doing is having to provide personal care for my mom. I'm her son. It's very awkward. She went in the hospital with a broken leg. Guess whose home she was discharged to? Mine. It was a single level. Guess who hadn't even thought about the fact that she will need to go use the bathroom? Me. Guess who's really thankful he has a really great wife? Me. I don't want to do that. Now, if I had to, of course, I would have. But there are some things that are just too much. I can never move in with my folks and take physically all the care, need, and responsibility on for them. I have to work, I have to support my family. So I cannot do that. I can never do that. It hurts to say that, but that's the way it is. So you have to be very, very realistic with yourself. Use those secret weapons if you have to. If you don't, great. That means you're doing the organizing really well, you're getting the help in that you need, and things are going along pretty smoothly. Now, for yourself, preventing burnout requires that you keep yourself healthy. We have all heard the healthy caregiver can provide the best care. Well, it's true. If you're sick, it's very hard to provide good care. So you need to eat right. You need to take care of your body, exercise. You also need to be willing to accept help when it's offered. A lot of times I hear people, oh, just let me know when you need some help. The answer that I most often hear given, no, we're doing fine, we're doing fine. Thank you for offering. That's okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't do that. Accept help. But don't just say, oh yes, I'd love to have some help. Be specific. Like I said earlier, ask for specific things. Can you bring dinner over on Thursday night? Would you mind washing clothes for me on Saturday morning? Would you be able to take mom grocery shopping? She mostly just wants to look while I take care of dad. Have specific things that you can ask for specific help with, and you'll find that people will provide help. And don't be afraid to ask for the help. It's hard sometimes. When you ask for help, you also have to understand that the help is going to be the help that is given. It may not be the help that you want. It may not be done the way that you want, but you've got to be able to ask for help and accept that help for what it is. Now, some people tell me, oh, it's easier to do it myself. Well, most often it is, but it's not the best thing to do. The best thing is to involve more people, because I hate to tell you this, if you get us real sick, you're not going to be able to provide that help. Somebody else will anyway. So you might as well involve other people now and get their help. Be able to accept how they give you that help, but don't reject it. And then the most important thing in preventing burnout is joining a support group. We have support groups online now. There are lots of different support groups around. Get involved with one of them. Get involved in one where you can actually talk, ask questions, hear other people give advice, get some resources from other people or from the facilitator. It's essential that you can be with a group of people who understand what caregiving is all about. People who understand that you say, I just can't take it anymore, I'm not going home tonight. Normal people will look at you and say, well, who's going to take care of them tonight? And they would be horrified. In your heart, you know you're going home tonight. But it's nice to be with people who go, I know just how you feel. It helps prevent burnout. So I hope some of this has been useful to you. And I'm delighted to answer any questions that anybody might have, or at least try to.
Thank you for all of that helpful, great information. If anybody has any questions, please type them into the Q&A box and we can go ahead and answer them. I'll give you folks a minute or so.
Sometimes it's hard to know what questions to even ask. We're so involved in what we're doing as caregivers that we have to take time to stop and think, what is it I need?
Mm-hmm.
And who can I ask?
Or if there are no questions, on this slide, Gary actually has an email on the bottom, info at the caregiverfoundation.org. Are they able to reach out to you that way if they have any?
Absolutely. That'd be a great way. And I answer all my own emails, so feel free to ask me anything, and I have opinions on almost everything. I don't know all the answers. Nobody does. You have to develop a whole handbook of answers for yourself. Don't be afraid to change what you think, though. Listen to other people and gain from that knowledge. But I strongly, strongly recommend the support groups and reaching out to professionals in this industry and asking for the kind of help that can really prevent you from having burnout.
How can they get more information on your support groups? If they're
The
interested?
support groups, we have a support group meeting virtually on the third Tuesday of each month. We're putting back our website that has a zip code search bar where we put in every support group we can find. That's malfunctioning a little bit. So if you email me with your zip code, I will be able to put you in contact with zip code support groups near you. Some are starting to meet in person again, but most are still meeting virtually.
Are these support groups hosted by the Caregiver Foundation?
Yes, we have one.
Okay.
Right now, we also cooperate with Haoli Hawaii Daycare. They have a support group that meets once a month, both at the Lutheran Church facility and at their Waimanu Street facility. There are other support groups. Alzheimer's Association has support groups. Some of the churches around have support groups, not many of them, unfortunately, but some of them do. There's, of course, Project Donna has a support group that meets once a month, and it's a terrific one. I'm often invited to join them. But find one. And if that one doesn't feel right to you, find a different one. You'll find one that works. And the first one you go to, you're going to feel strange. Some people start crying. Oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. Just don't worry about it. You can be yourself at a support group. Say what you need to say. I've had people at support groups say things like, I'm going to kill her tonight. I'm just going to put the pillow over her face. I'm done. She needs to go. What a horrible thing to hear, right? The response from the support groups have always been, oh, I felt like that so many times. Guess what? It relieves that stress so somebody doesn't go home and smother mom. But it allows them to express that anxiety and the level of stress that they're at and relieves that burden, just being able to talk about it. So I certainly hope nobody will go home and smother mom. I don't want you to do that. If you ever do reach a point that's a breaking point, call 911. The police have been well trained in helping situations diffuse. So don't hesitate. If you need to walk out the door with the cellular phone and call 911 and not go back in because you're afraid you're going to hit somebody or cause harm to somebody, do it. Go outside and call 911. You're not going to get arrested. You are going to get referred to social workers and people who can provide you help. So you're not alone, even if you feel you're totally alone. There are resources. Yeah.
Great. There are some questions just about this webinar. So this webinar is recorded and will be posted on our website later today. So you can rewatch it if you need to. Gary, do you have anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap this up?
Well, what I would like to say to each one of you who are providing care is thank you. Really, really thank you